Hi, everyone. I'm Laura Chandler, the Executive Director of the Foundation of the Sacred Stream and host of the Sacred Stream radio podcast. And I'm here with Isa Gucciardi, the founding director of the Foundation of the Sacred Stream. And we are here talking about shamanic understandings and practices in regard to trauma. And we were really looking forward to this conversation. And as we're waiting for people to arrive and to get started, maybe we'll just let you know a few things that are coming up at the Sacred Stream. You can always check our calendar at sacredstream.org. But we also give you some upcoming things. We have the Power Retrieval in the Middle World class coming up that Isa will be teaching. Mm-hmm. We have our dear, dear friend, Geshe Pema Dorje, coming back to the US to give teachings and talks and to raise funds to his many humanitarian projects that he's doing in Nepal and northern India. And he really does such great work. And you can just join us online for his talks. And he's just a joy to be around. So if you will go ahead and let us know. Don't forget about your concert. And yes, I will be performing some original songs. I am a songwriter and had a career as a songwriter before my latest incarnation in this lifetime. And we'll be doing a fundraiser for our 20th anniversary in our scholarship fund. And I will be, I'm looking forward to playing a concert on both online and in person at the Sacred Stream Center in Berkeley, California. So yeah, you can find all of that information and how to register on our calendar. So, at sacredstream.org. Yes, I mentioned that. Okay. Yeah, so welcome everyone. Please let us know where you're watching us from, and please feel free to to comment, to give us your thoughts, to ask any questions, or kind of direct us where you'd like us to go in the conversation if you have some ideas. But we really would like to know who you are and where you're watching us from. So go ahead and pop that in the chat at any time. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Wow, she's good. And if you'd like to help us and help the channel grow and so that more people who might enjoy this will be able to see it, you can go ahead and hit the thumbs up button if you like it, and subscribing will just helps us also reach more people. And it will also let you know when we have something that comes out. They'll just give you a little notification. And commenting actually also helps with spreading the word about this. So I've got a little strange message here from StreamYard, which we're watching. Okay, now it's gone. And I want to welcome Norval Daniel from Delaware. And Brangwyn is here from Colorado. Hi, Brangwyn. It's great to have you all here. And we'll go ahead and
talk a little bit about trauma and shamanism.
Shamanism, yeah.
Well, I always like to open the conversation with about trauma, about what is trauma, and what is traumatic. And I think that the definition of trauma is highly personal. And I think that we live in a society that tends to minimize trauma and tends to not recognize actually when something traumatic is happening, because people are so used to trying to just get along, get through, just try to keep their lives on track. And a lot of times people can't even take the time to know that they're having a hard time or that something hard has happened to them. And I think that this is why shamanic practice is so helpful, because it does help you kind of come back to yourself. Because the shamanic practice is, of course, the practice of healing, of divination, of ceremonial creation, of ministering that has existed for millennia in many different cultures, many times and places. And it is a system that is really based on understanding the nature and the power of the earth. And when we work shamanically, one of the things that we do is we return to the earth. And in that process, we also return to ourselves. And, sometimes it can be hard when you have been, driving, busy, to sit and, sit on the park bench and notice the trees and notice the sky, perhaps for the first time in a while. And then to realize that, oh, I have been disconnected here. I or maybe even not realize that, just realize, oh, I feel different, And I think that having that moment to understand our experience and to know ourselves again through the beautiful relationship that the earth offers us gives us the opportunity to be able to look at things that might be traumatic to us with support, with the power and the beauty of the earth supporting us. And in shamanic practice, there are many practices that are quite deliberately designed to offer that kind of support and to help whoever needs help understand that there are these forces of nature that are supporting them. And often these forces of nature take what in shamanic practice is called the helping spirits. These are the invisible powers behind the forms of nature that shamanic practitioners establish a relationship with, either through the shamanic journey or through plant medicine or through dreams or through vision quests or through visions that just come spontaneously. And the shamanic practitioner offers their own connection with the power of the earth to those who come to them for healing. And in applied shamanism, one of the things that we do is we try to help whoever comes for healing for something like trauma to really understand that they too have that capacity to connect with that unseen power. And it's not something that just rests with the shaman, and that connection with that unseen power is healing in and of itself. And then you have that relationship with this beauty and this power that belongs to nature, that you can begin to then look inward and begin to see, okay, how did I get separated from myself? Was there an event that made me step away from myself? Or is there a circumstance in my life that's making me step away from myself because it's traumatic in nature and I'm trying to get away from it? So I think that, knowing that we have all of the power and beauty of the earth to support us as we begin this voyage to understand our experience is really, really helpful. Mm-hmm. And in shamanic practice, there are several very well-known understandings about what creates trauma. And I think it's helpful to look at those definitions because, again, we don't have a lot of definitions in Western culture. And, I saw an article in the paper the other day that says screaming at a child can be as damaging as hitting them. Duh. And I think that, anyone who's been screamed at as a kid, that was not good. That was not fine. And, this idea that newborns don't experience pain. And so, having circumcisions is not a big deal. No, these are things that are not correct. I'm sorry. they're just, and I think that we need to understand that the culture doesn't recognize traumatic experience very well. And
I think it's starting to, and I think we have a lot more of a much, much broader conversation about it now in psychotherapeutic circles, and just in the culture generally. But it's taken a while to get there, because of the stigma around mental illness or being weak, so that's sort of the contemporary Western culture's response, right? But it's shifting. And so from the shamanic standpoint, and just kind of full disclosure, Isa, has a PhD in psychology. Well studied, we work in kind of both worlds. And so this topic today is the shamanic perspective, and I think it has so many bridges to what's happening in contemporary, even contemporary psychotherapeutic circles. Really, it can fit. And I see Norval Daniel is an outpatient therapist. So, there's a lot that it has to offer. And the viewpoint that I know you're about to go talk about, I just want to offer this, that I feel like the perspective of it is broad and enriching. When we talk about what I know you're going to talk about, soul retrieval and soul loss, and go on from there. But certainly in contemporary the contemporary psychotherapeutic realm, we have dissociative states and that kind of
responses to trauma that
Yeah.
are actually responses to trauma. I think that one of the things that in psychotherapeutic practice is that, sometimes I think all symptoms are a response to trauma. Like sometimes when I'm working with people, I think that, everyone's trying to accommodate having been, hurt or having misunderstood something or misunderstood the nature of who they are, and just feeling perhaps that they're not as good as everyone else, or experiencing bullying that so many people, especially young people, are experiencing. And that there's this understanding that I have to do something about this. I have to like pretend that I'm okay. I have to, and so let me have a cigarette and that's going to make me feel better, or let me have a drink at the end of the day because then I can come down from having to like manage all of this congestion that I feel as a result of all of these, many different types of, small and big traumas that we experience in our everyday lives.
And it's almost, and I want to get to the soul loss, but I just kind of restating what you're saying there is that we almost have to reconsider what, the word trauma, and trauma has a lot of stigma to it. But what you're saying is like, there are many things that we experience as human beings that may, big or small, create some form of traumatic response or be some kind of trauma. And there's almost another word for it. But like when we kind of embrace that, like we are going to have these experiences in our lives, something that may cause a trauma response in me or may feel traumatic to me may not be to someone else, So
it's a very personal thing. That's what I was saying.
Yeah.
It's very personal.
I always kind of give this example, like if you're 4 years old and you get lost in the grocery store, separated from your parents for the first time, and you're just freaking out, like that may be that may stick with you as a trauma. And so the same thing, freaking out too, and it may not stick with them as a trauma. So there's a lot to investigate in what it shapes you from your experience, both positive and negative or traumatic or less positive.
Another person getting lost from their parents in the grocery store might say, "Yeah, get out of here."
Just be like, "Yeah."
So yeah, it's so individual.
Yeah. So,
but you wanted to talk about
and moving into the idea of soul
loss.
loss, and
well, let's talk about this idea of soul loss, and this is a term that you find as well as the term soul retrieval that you find in many different traditions. One of the remarkable things about shamanic practice is that you can have many different cultures practice at different times in different places, and they've never come into contact with another, and they will have similar practices. Because
a different name, perhaps.
Maybe a different name, and maybe a different way of, say, they might all recognize soul loss, but they might have a different way of correcting it. And but the underlying is that the part of the self that leaves during traumatic experience and may not return is returned. So let me expand on that. Go ahead.
No,
So let me expand on that. I just kind of like put you into the deep end right
Yeah.
there. So in response to trauma, let's say you have a car accident and you are, you know, careening to the crash and you survive the crash, but you're not really all there. And someone comes and talks to you and you realize, can't really answer these questions. And that
You're in a state of shock.
You're in a state of shock, right? That state of shock from a shamanic perspective is understood to be created because the part of the self that could get away from the trauma got away. It left.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's outside. You're outside of yourself. That part is outside of you. And then it may on its own come back. And then you may come out of the shock experience. But and that happens frequently. But it's one of the things that can happen is that when someone has a severe trauma or shock like that, the part of the self that left to try to get away from the trauma gets stuck. Mm-hmm. And it gets stuck in what in shamanic parlance is called outside of time. Mm-hmm. And it can't find its way back. That part can't find its way back, and it can get stuck in the traumatic event itself, or it can just be kind of floating around in the person's sphere, but not able to connect, or it may just simply get completely dislocated and lost. Mm-hmm. So in that case, there are the symptoms of soul loss that begin to appear in a person's life. And
can you offer some kinds of things that cause soul loss?
Sure. Like, you want me to do that before I go into the
I'll leave it to you. I'll leave it to you.
Okay. So let me go into the symptoms, and we'll talk about all the different kinds of things that can cause soul loss. So the symptoms, some of the classic symptoms of soul loss are ones that you may recognize, such as post-traumatic stress symptoms like nightmares or a jumpiness or an inability to track, to stay focused, a sense of losing time. And also you can have symptoms like a kind of an anxiety that emerges, this sort of an ongoing anxiety, or a kind of ongoing depression that arises. And in that case, what is needed is a soul retrieval. And I'll talk about how you, or maybe you can talk about how to do soul retrievals.
That's it.
But I'll talk about the types of events that mm-hmm. would create a soul loss. Mm-hmm. So car accident, surgery, mm-hmm. A rape, being yelled at.
Like suffering a loss.
Suffering a loss, right? So having a loved one leave, either through death or by departing. Let's see, there's lots of different forms of disappointment, mm-hmm. or like a shocking disappointment, mm-hmm. something that happens like that you didn't expect to happen, mm-hmm. that can create soul loss. Mm-hmm. And so
we all have soul loss. It's common to the human experience.
I think it's very hard to be alive, especially these days, without having some kind of soul loss. Mm-hmm. And as you know, you were saying that people feel like it's kind of a negative thing to have a problem, you know, mm-hmm. that they're afraid of saying that they have a problem. Mm-hmm. And I think it is important to, you don't want to normalize soul loss, but I mean, actually soul loss has become normalized. That is, people are walking around in a state of soul loss, mm-hmm. frequently, but to normalize it in the sense of it's okay. Mm-hmm. You know, there's nothing wrong with you that you're having trouble managing trauma. Mm-hmm. It's normal that you would not be able to manage trauma. Mm-hmm. And so, and the thing is that everyone tries all these different ways to try to manage it that are sometimes produce more of the trauma. And one of the big ways that people try to manage soul loss is through addiction.
Mhm.
And that is always a path toward creating more soul loss and creating power loss.
Mhm.
And I'd like to talk about power loss as well, because they go hand in hand. And power loss occurs when there's a kind of a draining of energy that happens because you're exposed to something negative over time. So this could be an abusive relationship. It could be a boss who's undermining you. It could be environmental degradation that you're living in. It could be your own negative voice saying
Aimed at yourself.
Aimed at yourself. So, and also living with soul loss over time will create a power loss.
Mhm.
Because you're exposed to the trauma over time. And
Which is like a draining. It's like feeling drained or weakened.
Right. And so, and some of the symptoms are the same: depression, low-grade depression. One of the things that happens with power loss is you just have like kind of one bad luck thing happen after another. You can't seem to get traction.
Mhm.
You're trying to do something and you can't quite get there.
Mhm.
And so in that case, what is needed is the power that you have been losing needs to be returned to you.
Mhm.
And so in both cases, the shamanic practitioner sets out with the help of their helping spirits with whom they have an established relationship to look, in the case of soul loss, for the soul parts that have been lost. And in the case of power loss, to look for the power that has been lost. And there's a ceremony that is done once the guides have found, the teachers have found the soul parts or the power that is needed, where the soul parts or the power is returned to the person.
Mhm. Mhm.
And people experience, again, it's very individual how people experience a power retrieval or a soul retrieval. But most people feel a sense of calm that kind of arises. They feel a little bit more well-being.
Mhm.
And in applied shamanism, we have a process where we help people connect with the soul part themselves to ask how they might integrate it best into their life. And
so I just want to offer that applied shamanism is what we refer to is the work that we do at the Sacred Stream in sort of bringing sort of traditions more bringing the idea of shamanic practice into more a contemporary sort of therapeutic environment. So we've been doing that for a long time, and the kind of nutshell way to describe it is that you're helping the person be involved in their own healing, be more active in their own healing, their own shaman, if you will, which is unique to sort of a contemporary culture, different from a traditional culture and the needs of a traditional culture. So I just wanted to define applied shamanism. Okay. And I want to tell Norval Daniel that I thank you for your comments. And yes, we will get to those comments. Continue. Thanks.
So again, one of the things that happens with both power loss and soul loss is that we may have multiple traumas, and we may need to do multiple soul retrievals. And again, that's natural because we're living in a society where there is a lot of difficult things happening. Mm-hmm. And with power loss, there may be different forms of power loss that we might be experiencing due to different types of stimulus. So we may have to do multiple power retrievals or soul retrievals, and that's natural. And people report that they feel stronger over time, and they feel a diminishment in their symptoms as the work takes hold and as they form relationships with the power that's been returned to them and learn how to hold it and to apply it in situations where they might be exposed to power loss again. So this is a wonderful way to work, and it's a way to work that works with the spirit. And this is another reason why shamanic practice is so important, because we have wonderful methods of healing in our Western forms of medicine. that really are marvelous on a physical level. And we have, some interventions, for emotional and mental issues that can be also very helpful. But there isn't within the healing paradigms of the West until recently this recognition of the importance of having the experience of healing include the experience of the spirit.
And potentially, when we talk about healing spirits, or in shamanism, they're the helping spirits or guides. But for in traditional cultures, we can be talking about a higher power or God or something like that. Things So I just wanted to mention that does, it's not exclusive, but in talking about shamanism, we are kind of referring to this kind of lexicon.
Well, in the actual healing medical paradigm, there's not much mention of spirit, right? And I was just getting ready to say, of course, there are within religious traditions, there is the idea of spirit participating in life. But again, it's not always thought of as spirit is participating, or our spirits are participating in our life, and our spirits have suffered some kind of insult or some kind of trouble, and our spirits need to be healed.
Yeah.
And so when you combine shamanic practice with, say, medical Western practice, say in a surgery, wonderful to have the surgical intervention on a physical level, but the spirit is, what's happening here,
Awesome.
And it may leave. And so in that case, bringing the spirit back, doing a soul retrieval, doing a power retrieval to support the convalescent period is very, very helpful. And so you can have the two systems working in tandem with each other to great effect. So shamanism really has a lot to offer the West in that way, not only from the perspectives that it has in terms of defining what is trauma and what is and what creates a sense of kind of draining or difficulty in confronting the world, but also just in terms of the interventions that are available. And this is a wonderful thing, to be able to heal someone on that spiritual level, to someone to be able to heal themselves on that level of spirit, and that supports healing on a physical, mental, and emotional level very, very much.
Yeah, it's the whole person, right? It's the whole being, and not just the specialized one aspect of the being, right?
Right. Right. Yeah. So you said there was some.
Yeah. So John is here from Ohio. Welcome, John. Good to see you. Thanks for all your help with this. John and Cody are behind the scenes for us today. Ron's here from Petaluma, and we had someone here from Puerto Rico. Jenny, thank you for tuning in. And Norval Daniel is a therapist who works with patients and addiction, and says that they are seeing a tremendous power loss in relation to addiction. And hi, Allie from Montana, and also asked, it's a little bit, I don't know, is it this a little far afield, a little bit of a turn, has asked if you could talk about negative attachments. And I don't know how far you want to go into that, or if you want to.
Are we talking negative attachments from a psychological point of view, meaning that you have disrupted attachments with other people in your relationships? Are we talking at that level, or are we talking about the energetic attachments that are negative in nature? I'm not sure. Let us know which one you're thinking about there. In terms of negative attachments or negative forms of forming attachments from a Western psychological point of view, that will always create power loss. And when you're exposed to the dynamics of an unhealthy relationship, it's very hard to hold on to power. And which is why it's so important to really examine your relationships and understand, what effect they are having on your spirit, and not look away from that, which is sometimes something we may want to do if it becomes too complicated to try to change our lives if we're engaged with forms of attachment that are not healthy.
So I want to welcome Tasha from Ohio, who thanks us for offering this. And as I suspected, Norval Daniel said energetic attachment.
Yeah, I suspected
it too.
Yeah. So from a shamanic point of view, there's another way of explaining imbalance. There's many ways of explaining imbalance, but there's another way that is described as some kind of energetic interference, where you have an energy that is foreign to your own system, that has taken up residence in your energy system. And this can happen in a lot of different ways and can have a lot of different manifestations. You can have, you know, for instance, in traditional psychology, there's this idea of the introject, where you take on the qualities or the behaviors of another person in an effort to try to stabilize yourself or to deal with difficult situations or to gain power. And then that way of being is not really your way of cycling energy or your way of being in the world. And so then you have to deal with this experience that is not truly your own, and that will create power loss. There's also, you know, you're talking about addiction. When people are drugging and drinking, you know, they're basically stepping away from their own life energy. There's, you know, a lot of times people drug and drink to get away from themselves. And when you do that, your life energy becomes available for, from a shamanic perspective, beings that are disincarnate and who are looking for life energy. And there's a whole explanation about the experience of the middle world, where this kind of experience happens in the non-ordinary and ordinary aspect of the middle world. And this is something that we go into in much more detail, and I don't want to go too far into it here, but we do in the applied shamanism classes, we do explore this extensively. But in any case, when you have a spirit attachment, an energetic attachment, it can only happen when you have power loss or soul loss, because then that's when your life energy is not strong and something else can come in and kind of start feeding or working on your life or working with your life energy. And there are antidotes to this in all forms of shamanic practice, which involve releasing the spirit or releasing the energy that has taken up residence in someone's energy sphere. And you know, we call this an energetic interference release. And that, and when you remove that energy, and you can do the same thing with introjects, you can treat introjects exactly the same way to release them. And then you bring in the person's life energy, and you know, there are different ways to do that shamanically and depth hypnosis, which is a very shamanic informed model. We might use suggestion hypnosis to bring the life energy in. And in straight ahead shamanic practice, we might use songs or drumming or healing music to bring the life energy back. And that restores the person's system. And when we're doing this kind of work in applied shamanism, we're always thinking that we are helping heal both the guest and the host. So it's a very compassionate way of working that is, again, informed and nourished by the strong relationship with the helping spirits that are taking the forms of nature. And so the earth is, in all of her creative beauty, is participating in these processes. So there is relatively little re-traumatization in any of this. And I think that's a really important thing to remember, because of course people, when they've had a trauma, they worry about being re-traumatized. And you know, there are ways of working in Western psychology, you know, primal scream therapy. The 70s was big. That can just be re-traumatizing and not have any kind of effect, a definite or promised effect of healing. And I mean, it might be helpful just to release energy, but there's not always like a shift. That is sort of the hallmark of shamanic practice, which shamanic practice is very catalytic. It's all about moving energy from one place to another, taking out energy that doesn't belong, restoring energy that does belong. And, you know, this is where the labels power retrieval, restoring energy that belongs. Energetic interference release, taking energy out that doesn't belong.
Yeah, and you know, we have a great question that I want to offer, and I'll just tag on to that to say that, you know, a lot of what we're talking about is really becoming aware of our own state of energetic, our own energy, and our own state of spirit. You know, so we may understand our psychological state, our emotional state, our state of spirit is related to that. And then managing our energy, you know, as you start to tune into it, you become aware of it. Like, yeah, I really feel drained after I was with that person, or, you know, I you know, felt really, you know, happy and energized when I'm, you know, around this person. I mean, those are very basic ways of really starting to pay attention to how you navigate and manage energy. But it quickly moves into these other states where you can, you know, have more facility with what's going on in your environment and your internal environment. Question?
Yeah.
Okay. So Tasha asks, if something is feeding on my life energy, does that mean I won't be able to get that back? Or is it an infinite source of energy? It's a good question.
Well, so let's just, so it looks like we're going to be talking about energy here, right? And talking about.
Well, I think that, I know I know I thought we were going to be talking about soul retrieval, but I think we've only taken a little turn, and we can turn back to the broader subject. But yeah, let's talk.
But in order to talk, is it an infinite source of energy? Like, in order to answer that, we have to distinguish between the personal energy system and the way that we cycle energy in our personal energy system, and the universal life force that our personal energy system is connected to. Okay. And so in terms of the universal life force, which is the power of the earth, it's all of the generative, creative power of the earth that belongs to us, that we are born into, and that is all around us all the time, even if we can't recognize it or can no longer connect with it, right? Because we have had traumas, we've been exposed to negative things, we've had power loss, we're having soul loss. And so when that happens, our personal energy system, which is a kind of step down from universal life energy, it's a way of cycling energy that is personal to us, and the way that humans cycle life energy generally is typical of that species, as is with all other species. Like, different species have different ways of cycling life energy, and humans do too. So, and when we, in an ideal state, you know, when we don't experience trauma, where we're loved, where we know we're loved, we can express love, we can receive love, we have healthy food, we have healthy relationships, we have fulfilling work, where we are understanding what our gifts are and finding ways to bring them into the world. That is, you know, and that is, in that case, when we're able to do all of that, our personal energy systems are working in their natural relationship to the universal life force. Okay. So, but as I said, when you've experienced power loss or soul loss, your energy is not cycling that way, and that's when you can get interferences, and those interferences will drain your life energy, and they won't do that infinitely, because you can have an intervention on a shamanic level to stop that. So, so I think I've answered your question. I'm not sure I have.
Yeah.
But definitely the universal power of the earth is an infinite source of energy. And when a person's energy system is cycling in the way that is most native and most supportive, they also have access to an infinite source of life energy from the universal field. And they're able to cycle it in a way that supports them and allows them to attain a happy life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And she says, yes, thank you.
Okay.
And we're describing like that soul loss or power loss that are common experiences in living on the planet and being human. They can interrupt a little bit our connection to universal life energy, universal flow, power. But we have ways that, that's part of being human is healing those and connecting and learning how to do that.
And we learn so much about ourselves, I mean, we're talking about, oh gosh, there's this trauma, this was so bad, but the truth is when we experience difficulty, when we experience suffering, and we set about to try to understand it, and when we seek out healing, and when we find what it is that helps us, and we learn, and we become more aware of ourselves and aware of everything around us. And the path of the shaman is often called, you may have heard this expression, it's often called the wounded healer. And this is because when a person is called to the shamanic path, one of the calls is that they have suffered some kind of calamity or some kind of illness, and they have come to the path to try to understand how to heal themselves. And then in the process of working with all of the principles of shamanic healing, they learn how to heal themselves. They learn what it is to heal themselves. And then they may decide to turn around and become a shamanic practitioner themselves, or they may simply come back to themselves so that they can be fully in the world, offering their gifts, whatever they are. But if they do choose the path of the shamanic practitioner, then they have walked the path of the wounded healer.
Yeah. So, in healing these interruptions, healing these, occurrences that we're referring to as trauma, power loss, soul loss, is not only a shamanic experience. It's a lens that we're understanding things through, and also, but it's also a powerful methodology that has been around for a long, long time. And as Isa mentioned, there are these cultures where you find this something like that soul retrieval, soul loss, power retrieval, power loss, removing energies that are not native to the person across cultures, and not just shamanic cultures, but certainly in many shamanic cultures. And one that I just want to share that
I know which one
you do. I love. And we had the privilege of studying with a master of this tradition. This is the Bun tradition of Tibetan Buddhism, and they refer to it in sort of English now as soul retrieval. And it's a detailed and very beautiful process, ceremony and process, ritual, yeah, and of healing. And we had that experience of studying with this Master Bun practitioner. But what I'll share with you is in the Bun tradition of Tibetan Buddhism, turquoise, the stone turquoise, is considered to be a protector of the soul. So I like that.
Yeah, there's always a gift of turquoise that's given after a soul retrieval. But I love the method because, when the method that I've described to you is the method of soul retrieval through the journey, where you're working with your helping spirits in the journey, going outside of time, looking for the soul part or looking for the power. But in this case, there's a whole ritual making of like they will form a deer out of clay, and they will put the deer on a boat. And they will put the boat on a pond, and they will ask the deer to point to the direction where the soul part is. And so, and then wherever the boat is going, whichever way the the deer points, the shaman will follow that and look for the soul part and bring it back, generally with a piece of turquoise to seal the healing. It's so beautiful. The little deer is so sweet.
And I just want to offer this also, that again, in contemporary psychological thought, one of the ways to think of soul retrieval or soul loss, we're in shamanism, we're calling it soul loss, an aspect of the self caught outside of time, stuck outside of time. Well, we understand this in psychology as an aspect of the psyche that's caught cycling in trauma. Did you say so? Yeah, and so it's a way to understand. It's like a part of you is still stuck in the trauma. So maybe you're having flashbacks, or whatever responses you're having, PTSD sometimes, or something like that. But it's similar. And what's beautiful about shamanism is you have this whole methodology that goes even beyond kind of finding that part and then how to integrate it and that kind of thing. So anyway, I want to thank everyone for being here today. And if you have any other comments or questions, let us know. We'll wrap up fairly soon here, and really appreciate you liking, giving the thumbs up if you like this, making a comment, subscribing to the channel. Just helps us reach more people and helps the channel grow and shows your support. So we appreciate that. And one thing that you mentioned, we will do another live about this, but I do want to acknowledge this, that Issa is the creator of a therapeutic model called depth hypnosis. And depth hypnosis brings into contemporary therapy these ideas. So it bridges, it draws from elements of Buddhism and the philosophy of Buddhism and some of the understandings of the psyche that Buddhism holds, with some of these powerful catalytic engines of shamanism, and adapted to work in a talk setting. It's a very powerful
hypnotherapeutic setting. Yeah. So you're working in the altered state quite a bit.
Yeah. And it draws from psychology and transpersonal psychology, and works in the altered state, and also understanding energy. And
because energy medicine is a huge part of depth hypnosis. And
so it's a lot. I'm just kind of dropping that there, and you can go to our website to learn more about it. But it's quite a remarkable model, and we do have a book coming out about it very soon. I think the launch date, publication date is January 22nd, 2024. So it's coming up. And if you're interested in more about applied shamanism, you can visit our website, sacredstream.org. If you're interested in depth hypnosis and how we're working in a more contemporary kind of therapeutic model with shamanism and Buddhism, you can learn about that. Allie's here. Hi, Allie. Thank you. It is always such a pleasure to be with Laura and Issa, and I always learn so much by hearing you both speak. So much gratitude. Thank you. And Sophie gives 3 thumbs up. Thank you. And thank you, Norval Daniel, for all of your comments and for the work you're doing in the world. Yes. We got a lot to do.
Yeah, we'll do it together.
Yeah. So until next time, we will be back. Oh, I want to tell you, and check out our podcast, the Sacred Stream radio podcast. We've got some fantastic guests, and who are, I'm just going to invite you to explore that, but you can listen to Sacred Stream radio anywhere you get your podcasts, audio, and it's on our YouTube channel, also Sacred Stream YouTube channel, so you can just find us there. So
see you in the stream.
Yes, thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone.